All right, we're going to talk about a very frustrating reality with AI development these days. Have you ever found that your AI is repeating the same mistakes continually, like it has amnesia every time you talk to it? The struggle is real, and you're not alone. But imagine an AI environment that truly learns from every session, continually improving upon itself. Well, I built just that into the Secure Vibe Coding OS, and I'm integrating a continual learning system with Claude Code for faster, smarter development. So stay with me to the end, and here's what I promise you that you will learn: how every session makes the next one faster, systems that prevent repeating mistakes, automatic team knowledge compounding over time, achieving 3 to 5x velocity increases within a week or two. That's what you can get out of what I have developed. So stay tuned. So, we've all been there. We have this expensive cycle of repeated mistakes. So, we initially have a struggle. We ask Claude Code to implement some kind of feature, perhaps like rate limiting, and the approach fails. And then we iterate and we try again and it fails. We get errors, we debug it, we try again, and then we get a breakthrough. Okay, after maybe an hour messing with it, we finally get it to work. And maybe at the best case, we'll like maybe add a comment or something into the source file, right? So maybe in the future, we don't make that same mistake. But then, sure enough, a couple weeks later, either you or your teammate needs rate limiting again. And Claude Code goes off and just suggests the same old tired approaches, right? And it's like Groundhog Day all over again. You waste another hour or two making the identical mistakes. And then a couple weeks later, you need rate limiting again on another app or another part of your app. And it tries approach A again, it fails. And then you finally remember, wait a minute, didn't I already solve this problem? So the core problem here is that AI has no memory between sessions. It truly does have amnesia, especially when you start with a clean context. All right. And your team knowledge is scattered across comments and documents, and that just makes it even worse. It compounds the problem. And we keep repeating the same mistakes. Okay, so I built a 3-part continual learning system. It's built on Claude skills, which are amazing in and of themselves, but a lot of people aren't talking about the fact that you can use skills to write additional skills. How about that? And so we built a comprehensive solution with 3 integrated components that work together to capture, retrieve, and compound knowledge over time. The first part is a dynamic lessons library. So inside of our .claude/skills folder, we have an additional folder called lessons, and inside of there, we will automatically capture the lessons that we learn in each session. I'm going to show you how to do that. We're going to store what worked, what failed, the exact parameters, and it'll be fully searchable by topic so that Claude, through its progressive discovery, can rediscover that the next time that it comes into it. All right, so before we start any significant work, we've added a command called advise. All right, so the idea of this is it goes out and it looks through all of those recent memories, those lesson learned, as well as all the other skills that you have acquired in your .claude skills folder. And and then you ask it a question like, how would I implement a secure landing page? And it will go out and it will progressively discover those skills, and then it will prime the context window with that information so that it immediately gets what it needs and doesn't have to experiment. And then you go ahead and you iterate and you tell it to go ahead and implement. And you're probably going to have to iterate a couple times. And then once you've got a breakthrough and you've had a good long session and it's actually working, then you just remember to do the /retrospective command. Now, retrospectives have been around computer science for a while, and any developers know about them. It's kind of like where you do a hot wash or a debrief after, a cycle or a sprint. And so, because we want to capture those lessons learned so we don't keep repeating them in the future, right? And so when you run this retrospective command, it's going to analyze the entire session. It's going to figure out what worked and what didn't work. And it's going to summarize all of that and make it searchable for future sessions through progressive disclosure, because we're doing it all in Claude skills. All right, this is powerful. This feedback loop is what's going to allow us to get our system to be exponentially smarter and faster, and it's going to help us build up institutional knowledge both on our project and in our team or our company or however you're doing this. So let's talk about scaling your AI's intelligence. All right, so you can have individual learning, and you would do that in this .claude skills lessons folder. Okay, you could also have team-wide knowledge. Okay, you can be pointing to a shared drive or some type of Dropbox repo, or what you can do, the best practice is to develop a plugin and then distribute that plugin, let everybody install that plugin, and then everybody's working off of those Claude skills, and they can update those plugins, each morning, for example, or they can even have a script that does that for them regularly once an hour and goes out and pulls down the latest skills. All right, so you can create a plugin, you know how to do that, or maybe if you comment below, I'll make a video about that. And then you can install those team plugins, right? And you can store those, for example, out on GitHub, or you can store them locally on a shared drive. Very, very useful to bundle up skills and commands and scripts or anything that you need into a plugin so that it can be distributed. Okay, so I call this the progressive continual learning loop. Okay, so start with step one. Before any major planning session or before any major task, we want to go ahead and issue this /advise command. Okay, and what that's going to do is it's going to go out and tap into that lessons learned library, and it's going to prime the pump of that context. Step two, you want to go ahead and do your work session, and you're going to make those attempts, and you're going to break things, and you're going to encounter failures, and then you're going to have breakthroughs, and then eventually you're going to get it working. Okay, and then we want to move to step three, which is we do our retrospective. Okay, and as I've said, then what that'll do is that'll formalize those new learnings. It'll codify them in a searchable manner so that future sessions can draw on them. Okay, and it's going to do that in a dynamic lessons library. Okay. Now let's look at each one of them in a little bit deep dive here. So the advise command, it's learning from the past and priming the context so that you don't waste valuable time experimenting anew every time that you want to do something. Okay, so you just run the command advise before you start your work. You describe the goal. So for example, you'd say /advise space, explain to me how I would build a secure homepage. And it would do this. It would go out and look at all of your skills. Now, if you're using the secure vibe coding OS, then that I'm going to point you to at the end of this presentation, then you have a number of security skills already built in. It's a secure baseline that allows you, it's a starter kit, if you will, that allows you to start with a secure foundation and then build on top of that. And this is all built within that. Okay, but you can also pull that down to get an idea of how this stuff works so that you can build your own. Okay, then what you're going to want to do is receive those targeted insights, all right, from those existing lessons learned. And then, like I said, it's going to prime the context so that you can start with working solutions so that you don't have to keep reinventing the wheel. Okay. So what used to take 2 hours of time now takes 20 minutes. Okay, that's a 6 times speed up from checking past lessons before you start. Okay, let's talk about the retrospective command. What does it do underneath the hood? First thing it's going to do is do a git status check. If you have any files that have not been checked in to Git, or GitHub, then it's going to advise that you go ahead and do that, or at least stash those before it does its work. Okay, then it's going to ask you to choose the workflow. Do you want to just merge these new skills and lessons learned into your main, or do you want it to create a branch and then a PR back into main for you? If you're working in a team environment or a complex code base, then you want to choose the latter. Okay, then it's going to do the session analysis. It's going to go out and extract from all of the context, okay, all of the goals, the successes, the failures, the key insights, while it's still in the context. And it's key that you do this before like a compacting happens. All right, so if you see a compacting happening, maybe that's your clue to go ahead and run this retrospective command prior to that. Okay, then it's going to create a detailed lessons learned. It's going to put that into a skill.md file with all those failed attempts, solutions, parameters, and so forth. And then it's going to identify related skills that could also be updated. Now get this, this is mind-blowing. So yes, skills can be used to update other skills, existing skills. All right, so for example, we already have a rate limiting security skill, but if we're finding through our analysis and discovery that that thing is not up to snuff and it's causing us like a debug loop, well then at the end of that session, this retrospective is going to make a recommendation to update that security skill so that next week, next month, next year, whenever we need that skill, it's better. So your system is continually improving just through these updated lessons learned in these skills folders. That's amazing. Okay, and then it's going to do a clean git commit at the end of all of that, and or a PR if that's what you selected. And so this way you have a history of your knowledge growth over time. That also allows your team then to pull those down if you choose to do it that way. And so we have lots of advantages of this. So let's talk about the compounding learning effect over time. So the first week, you're not going to have any lessons learned build up, right? So, but after a few hours of using Claude and doing a couple retrospectives, you're going to start to see those skills build out in the lessons folder. And I've set it up so that it'll basically make just a few words that summarize all of those lessons so that you can just go in there and look in the lessons and you can actually see it developing over time and what each of the topics were, okay? And then, come about week 2, you're going to start to see that compounding effect, okay? You're going to be in less debug loops, right? Less death spirals. Make sure that you keep using that run, or that you keep running the /advise command so that you find those lessons before you start any significant work. That's a key point. All right. And then keep building those retrospectives. All right. So what will happen then is by month 3, you got a mature system. Okay. You've got 20 plus lessons accumulated. Most of the tasks have relevant past experience. Your development velocity is 3 to 5 times faster on average. New team members are onboarded faster by reading those lessons, and skills continually improve with real world data. Okay, so here's just some results. One of the things that I want to share with you is that this notion of progressive disclosure. It's a key facet of skills. I see a lot of people using Claude Code skills incorrectly. They set up the skills in the folders, and then they make like a command that says, go read all of the skills and find one that does this. You don't have to do that. They've built into the agent loop for Claude Code the ability to, every command that you give it, it's going to go out and it has loaded into its context at the very top. It has all of that description from the YAML file of the skills file or the YAML section at the top of the skills file. It has all of that already in context, and that's all that it needs in context. So unlike MCPs, which bloat up your context and make you have to compact like every few minutes, right? And we all know that with LLMs, there's this thing called the dumb zone, right? So if you fill up more than half of the context window, it gets dumber. And so that's a bad thing, right? So what we want to do is be very efficient with our memory use and our context use. And so this thing called progressive disclosure was a major breakthrough by Anthropic when they did this skills system and the skills pattern. And so the first version of this I made, I let Claude build it. And it sure enough, inside of the advise and the retrospective commands, it was saying keywords like search the skills or find skills. And just by those couple triggering words, what I was noticing was it was going out and using the file search and glob commands of, just bash commands to go read all of those skills and clog up the context. And I see a lot of people making that mistake. Instead, all you have to do is tell it to use progressive disclosure to discover relevant skills for the given topic. And do not use file commands or bash commands to read all of those skills. Instead, discover them progressively. You should have that statement in your command, okay? And then you need to scan your command, which is basically a prompt. You need to make sure that you're not triggering file reads unnecessarily elsewhere, okay? Again, that's a pro tip. I see a lot of people making that mistake. My first version, I had these long command files, and they were about 1,100 lines. Okay, now it's by using just progressive disclosure, they're about they're less than 100 lines or so, and it's a much more efficient way to do it. Okay, this gives me a 13x efficiency gain. Okay, in terms of managing my context. All right. Now, like I said, the advised command's about 100 lines, the retrospective about 200. So, like, that's huge. Okay. All right. So, what if you're already using the Secure Vibe Coding OS? If you are, then what you want to do is you want to use these commands that I've given you now, /poll repo safe, and that'll basically it's a built-in command in the operating system, which will pull down all of the changes in the secure vibe coding OS, again, which I'll describe here in a second. It'll pull those down safely and show you what needs to be merged. And if you're doing it from within Claude, Claude will intelligently merge that stuff for you. You can also just pull down the security skills if that's all you're interested in updating. Or maybe you want to pull down the commands folder, which includes like this, the advise and the retrospective commands. Or you can also do this pull agents, which I'm always updating my agents. I have security agents in there. Again, I'm going to show you all this just in 1 second. Hang tight. All right. So if you already have an existing build of mine using the Secure Vibe Coding OS, then you want to make sure that you've added a template, a remote template in that points back to my repo, so that then you can fetch that template and pull the tags down. And then you want to cherry pick these latest 4 commits of mine. This will give you all of this capability that we just talked about. Okay, then you want to push that up to your repo. All right, and then Git will handle all of that for you and safely merge those in if you've adjusted any of this stuff. Like if you already adjusted some of these commands, for example, or skills, then it will show you how to smartly merge those in. Okay, here's the technical architecture and implementation of this continual learning system. Okay, it's all within the Claude folder, as you would expect, the .claude. Okay, you can run this again at the project level or at your system level. If you put this in your home directory, right, well then this will work across all of your projects, which could be a really beautiful thing. Okay, so it's got a commands folder, and inside of there we have our advise and our retrospective. Okay, I encourage you to go check it out. And then we have these pull commands so that you can update, going forward. And then we have this skills folder. Now I already had a security skills folder in there that has, 30 or so security skills like CSRF protection or rate limiting or input validation or, you name it. I've got it in there. And but now we've added this lessons folder, and what it's going to do is it's going to make a topic for each of these lessons learned, and it's going to build a skills file underneath of it. Okay, and then we have this skill dependency file, which helps the progressive disclosure. Okay, and then we have instructions on how to use all this back in the README. So this is basically what you get. This is the update for version 2 of the Secure Vibe Coding OS. Okay, there's a skill template built into the commands, and it looks sort of like this, right? All right. Again, measurable results. Okay, you should expect a 5x speed up on repeated task. Okay, you should find that you're 3 to 5 times faster with your overall development because you're making less of these mistakes over and over again. Less frustrating too. Okay, and if you have a team involved, you should be 10x more efficient in onboarding new team members because they get ramped up with all of the organizational knowledge and skills. How cool is that? Okay. Now, the 3 ways to implement continual learning. You can use the Secure Vibe Coding OS. Again, you can get the repo right here. And then you can go in there, you can install the dependencies, and then you can start using it immediately. And there's good instructions there. This is basically a secure starter kit for Next.js, but it has Clerk, and it has Convex, and it has Clerk subscriptions built in, so you don't have to mess with Stripe. And so it's basically a SaaS starter kit, but I added the security batteries, I like to call it. It comes with a number of security skills, also security agents, where it'll run like a third-party security scan for you using like SemGrep. And so all that's just built in, okay? You can also just pull this into an existing project. Like I said, you can just add me as a remote template, and then you can just go fetch and cherry pick these in, and it'll pull this structure from the previous page or back here. It'll pull all of this in for you. Or you can build your own. You can go out and look at my repo, and then you can just see how I did it, and then you can build your own. And I hope you do that, okay? And then I hope you comment on that and contribute back. Even better yet, like clone my project, or excuse me, fork my project, and then give me a pull request back. I'd love that. I'd love to have you as a contributor on the project. Okay, so just a reminder, best practices, always run that advise command before every non-trivial task. Run that retrospective after solving hard problems. Be specific in the lessons that you're capturing, and make sure that you review and approve those skills carefully. So it's going to come up with that. And what I mean by those last 2 bullets, it's going to come up and it's going to say, do you want to write this skills file? Read that thing. Make sure that those lessons learned are accurate. And you'll find if you're using Claude Code that they are, right? Especially if you're using Opus 4.5, which I recommend. All right, and here's a timeline of the results that you should expect. The first day, probably not too much. Day 7, much faster completion on similar tasks. Day 30, substantial velocity. Day 90, you're superhuman. Okay, key takeaways. AI without memory repeats mistakes. Okay, but what we can do is we can capture learning systematically. And then what we could do is we can search those past lessons before we start new tasks. We can update our existing skills with these findings so that we're continually improving and getting smarter all the time. We use progressive disclosure for efficiency. That's a key point and tip here. Okay, and then what we do is we create a compound learning effects to where we are just exponentially getting smarter. And as these models get smarter, and then we build better tooling around the models, that's what we're talking about here, then that's how we're going to take it to the next level in 2026. So remember, this system literally gets smarter the more that you use it. So every session makes the next one faster and smarter if you're using the advise and the retrospective. This is knowledge that compounds over time. All right, so once again, you can find the repo out here on GitHub. Also, link in the description of this video. And take a moment to subscribe to this channel. If you haven't, you'll find that I've been live streaming every night now for a little more than a month, and we're building an app live because I just want to take an app to market that's vibe coded securely. You can find a lot of channels out there talking about vibe coding, but very few talk about secure vibe coding. So I'm one of those. And you'll find if you hang out around me, you'll get a strong dose of security as it relates to AI coding and vibe coding. All right, so again, today announcing version 2.0. You'll find the release notes on that page, and you also find detailed installation instructions. All right, this is all part of a secure vibe coding masterclass, which you can also find out about, link in the description. You can join my Skool group where I have about 8,000 mentees in there working on AI and cybersecurity. And inside of the classroom there, you'll get access to the secure vibe coding masterclass, of which I go through all of this and much more, and all of the things that we're doing in the streaming. So once again, thank you for following. Thank you for hanging in here to the end. Until next time, be safe out there and have fun.